Last time I spoke about the unfair treatment I received working on board Royal Caribbean, but I had no idea how much worse things were about to get. Why I Work for 5 Cruise Lines Part 8.5. Be sure to watch Part 8 first. After that phone call, I was kept waiting in the medical centre for hours. Then suddenly, 2 security guards appeared and I immediately knew something wasn't right. I approached the doctor and was told I was being medically debarked. I was so shocked, I just got off the phone to the shoreside psychiatrist who told me I was mentally fit for duty, that the anxiety was caused by this specific situation on board, and we have 5 days to resolve it. We go from that to the doctors on board telling me I have to leave the ship and have to be under security supervision until I did. I immediately knew what these precautions were about. They were treating me as though I could potentially be a risk to myself. Apparently something I said had been overheard by another doctor and it was a trigger that made them feel they needed to get me off the ship ASAP. I'm just going to play you a voice note I sent to my friend at the time when I was on the ship while all this was happening.
I can't believe this. It's got so out of hand because after my talk with the psychologist, he said I'm fine, I'm mentally fine. It's this internal situation that needs to be sorted. And they said we need to resolve it within 5 days. So they were going to give me 5 days off and give me medication, help me sleep. And I told the doctor on board more of my story. And then apparently a different doctor said something. I said triggered something and they feel like they need to get me off. And I was like, what was it that I said? And it was the fact that I feel like everybody's watching me. And I went, I didn't say that. I said, I feel my manager is going to try and get me in trouble for every little thing. So I need to constantly watch my back.
And that's exactly how I remember it. I told them I wasn't saying everybody is watching me like I'm having some kind of paranoid illusion. I was saying I feel like my manager is watching everything I do so he can find any little thing to get me into trouble. So I need to constantly watch my back. Those are 2 very different things. The decision had been made and honestly by this point I was just emotionally exhausted. I felt like I'd explained myself over and over again and nothing I said seemed to make any difference. So I had to accept it.
Tired of having to try and say the right things. You're not believe me anyways. I'm sick of the management here. I'm sick of being treated like shit. So send me home. But at the end of the day, it is absolutely your loss. I could have done such great work for you guys.
Now before I explain what happened next, I do want to be careful with how I talk about this. I completely understand why procedures like this exist. If somebody is genuinely at risk of harming themselves, of course, there needs to be measures in place to protect them. But I was not a risk to myself. I told them that. The psychiatrist told them that. So what happened next was completely unnecessary and so over the top. I was moved into a standard bunk bed crew cabin on my own, no window, no fresh air. A security guard was stationed outside my door 24/7. The door had to remain ajar and approximately every 30 minutes security would open it to check on me. My shower curtain was removed. My medication was taken from me and had to be administered under supervision. My phone chargers and hairdryer were taken away. If I wanted to use my hairdryer, somebody had to watch me. Even when I showered or used the bathroom, I had to leave the door wide open. I'd gone to medical asking for help because unfair treatment at my workplace was making me feel anxious. And in 24 hours, I was isolated under constant supervision in conditions that honestly felt more like a prison. It was the most extreme escalation I'd ever experienced. Although the food was better. I got a chicken salad from the guest buffet, so there's that. I felt so angry, frustrated, and alone. What was happening to me was really unfair, and to be honest, it felt so corrupt. Regardless of what happened to me, I wanted this whole situation documented, so I raised a formal grievance against my manager and detailed everything that happened in a 20-page statement. I am not kidding, it took me hours to write. And because of the precautions I was under, security had to sit opposite me and record me on their body cam the whole time. I even called the Royals hotline for crew to report concerns if they didn't feel comfortable going through their own management. And to quickly fast forward and just give you the outcome of that, I eventually received a response saying they found no wrongdoing and the case was closed. And I'm pretty sure that manager went on to become a cruise director. And this is exactly why crew can become so reluctant to speak up. We're constantly told about equality and having a safe working environment on board, but in my experience, that's not always the reality. Because when you do speak up, go through the official channels and nothing comes from it, while the people above you seem to remain protected, you start thinking, what's the point? Why would a crew member risk speaking up if they think they could be the one who ends up losing their job? Anyway, I was due to be medically debarked in Nassau the following day, where I would fly to Miami and then home to London. And just to add to the complete disorganisation of this ship, they wouldn't even let me leave my isolation cabin to go to my cabin to go pack. All my stuff was still in there, and I told them I had 3 suitcases worth of stuff and it was going to take me forever, so I needed to start doing that ASAP. I had an hour and a half before I was meant to be off the ship and they still wouldn't let me go. I had to call up crew admin to let them know how ridiculous they were being.
I'm supposed to be off in an hour and a half and I still haven't packed, and they will not let me go to my cabin to pack my bags. I just rung up crew admin and was like, I'm not going to be getting off the ship at 2 o'clock, because I still haven't packed. And they're like, what? I was like, no, they won't let me go.
So yeah, that was a hassle. They let me out at the 11th hour and then security are trying to rush me. And I said, I told you guys this would happen, so you're going to have to deal with the consequences now. Yeah, it was a nightmare. Eventually I was ready and made my way to the gangway, but apparently just putting me on a plane wasn't enough. The HR manager was there to see me off and introduce me to this random Spanish man who barely spoke English, and then informed me he's going to be your escort all the way from Nassau to England. Of course he is. It was yet another unnecessary dramatic step. But honestly, by this point, I just stopped questioning anything. I cheekily said to the HR manager, so is he coming all the way home with me? And he told me that as soon as we landed in London, I'd be free to leave my escort and go home. Remember that. And if that HR manager ever does watch this, I will never understand why you did what you did, or why you thought the way I was being treated by my manager was acceptable. But you were HR. I came to you for help, but instead, you dismissed me. I just want you to know that you handled this whole situation terribly. Now, my escort himself, he was lovely. He'd never been to England before and was so excited about seeing London, and he only had 24 hours there, so he was asking me the best way to see as much of the city as possible. I mean, I don't think he really understood what was going on with the whole situation, but hey, at least somebody was getting some happiness out of my misery. Then we got to Miami, and this is where the whole escort situation became more ridiculous. I got through security, but he didn't. He'd been pulled aside for additional screening, and I'm thinking the whole reason I've been given an escort is because apparently I'm so much of a risk to myself, I can't be left alone. Yet here I am, alone, in Miami airport. Make it make sense. Here's me enjoying an old fashioned while I wait for him. Yum. Eventually, he showed up at the 11th hour and we did make it on the plane. But yeah, the whole situation was crazy. We landed at Heathrow and I thought, finally, this madness is over. I walked through arrivals and see two people standing there holding a sign with my name on it. Now, after everything I'd been through, I just wanted to get home. So I treated myself and booked a driver online to pick me up from the airport. So naturally, I walk over and say, hi, you must be my driver. And they're like, yeah, we're here to take you to the hotel. The hotel? What hotel? Yeah, this madness was far from over.
Oh my god, you are never going to guess what has happened now in this bloody story. Let me tell you, it's ridiculous. Flight's fine, me and the escort got off, there was people waiting for us, and they were like, right, if you're ready, we'll take you to the hotel. I was like, excuse me? Like, what hotel? They were like, yeah, like, we've got a hotel for you overnight, and then, you can get assessed by a doctor, and then take you, wherever you want to go tomorrow. I was like, are you kidding me?
So it turned out Royal had booked me into a Heathrow hotel overnight because I needed to see another psychiatrist for a medical assessment the following morning before I was allowed to go home by myself. And these two representatives were there to make sure that happened. This was beyond a joke now. Nobody had told me any of this. Remember the HR manager on board? He said I could leave my escort and go home once I landed. Meanwhile, my actual driver is also there, holding another sign with my name on it, ready to take me home. Once I collected my thoughts and figured out what was actually happening, I thought, well, the car's already paid for. My escort was excited to see London, so I said, you might as well use it to get into Central. He was delighted. And honestly, I was happy for him, but I couldn't help seeing the irony. The man had been sent across the Atlantic specifically to look after me. He barely spoke English, and somehow I'd ended up sorting out his transport and sightseeing. I mean, I really liked him, so this is nothing against him personally. It's just funny because apparently I wasn't fit to travel alone, so it did make me wonder how useful this arrangement would actually have been for somebody genuinely experiencing a serious mental health crisis issue and needed that support. But seriously, how did we even get to this point in the first place? Security, a medical debark, an escort across the Atlantic, a surprise hotel, and now another medical assessment. Was all of this really a better solution than simply dealing with the workplace situation that had caused the anxiety in the first place?
So fun fact, I'm not on board anymore. I did have to suddenly debark due to some personal reasons. I know that's very vague and cryptic, but I just wanted people to know that I am absolutely fine.
So that's what was really happening behind that video. The next morning I was taken for another medical assessment, and here's where things get even more confusing. Back on board, I've been told by the shoreside psychiatrist I was mentally fit and that this anxiety was caused by the situation at work. But the email the doctor received from them described me as having a mental disorder and being unfit for duty. I explained everything to him, and finally I was talking to somebody completely detached from the ship who could look at the situation normally. After talking to me and reading the report, I remember him saying, I have no idea who wrote this thing. Looking back at the messages I sent to my friend on that day, he described the whole situation as pathetic and over the top, and said I was in perfect mental health. Finally, someone was speaking sense. He assessed me as fit for duty and saw no reason why I couldn't work. And after that, I could finally go home. The following day, I was assigned a Royal Caribbean caseworker, which began what would become an almost 2-year process of this whole situation dragging on.